Get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is John, and I'm the Events and Marketing Coordinator here at the Japanese Friendship Garden. We are super excited to not only be working with the Aja Project once again, but having one of their fellows, Kristi Lin, as our guest of honor tonight. So, as I'm still letting people in right now, I'm gonna pass off the mic to Kristi and Riz so that they can introduce themselves and get our program started for today.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristi and thank you so much for coming. I am going to end the slideshow for now and stop sharing my screen. Yeah, just thank you for coming and welcome to my artist talk and virtual walkthrough. I want to first begin with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land we work on and the indigenous nations who have stewarded this land. So we're the piece is at the Japanese Friendship Garden, and this work is made possible through the Aja Project. Both the Japanese Friendship Garden and Aja Project are housed on Kumeyae and Luisenyo land. The Aja Project also works on Tongva and Kalapuya land, and indigenous people have lived on this land for millennia, and they continue to thrive and resist. So why that's important is we're talking about civil liberties today, and in that we must name that indigenous people have suffered discrimination and injustice at the hands of our government since our country's founding. And also, as we talk about landscape art and design, we also acknowledge that indigenous people have nourished and healed and protected this land, and therefore it's our obligation to take care of the earth in everything that we do. So that as we finish the acknowledgement, we're going to put a link in the chat where you can learn more about the native land that you're on. Okay, so my name again is Kristi Lin, and I'm just really excited to share the piece with you. And really, it's just going to be short of the presentation so that really we can have more time for questions and conversation. So first, to give some context about the piece. So this work is made possible through the Civil Liberties Fellowship, which is a program of the Aja Project, an arts organization here in San Diego. And I'd like to introduce Rizal Javier. She will be co-facilitating. She's the managing director of the Aja Project. And really, I'm very excited that she can be part of this. She's really a mentor to me, and really, if I was to think about like one thing that I really got from her is she's an artist too, and her work deals with also like intergenerational cultural heritage. And she is really the first person who pointed out to me that we each have different stories, and in understanding her own culture and in understanding the Philippines, she actually more is interested in like how actually her living in the US and growing up here gave her like a new perspective on her culture, and that's what I took into my piece as well. So hand it to Riz.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristi. My name is Rizal Javier. She'd mentioned I'm the managing director at the Aja Project, and you can call me Riz. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be with everyone here today. So many people here in our room, which is great. We're here to celebrate the culmination of Kristi's project and the work that's been created by the Civil Liberties Fellowship. So thank you, everyone. If you don't know about the Aja Project, I'd like to share just a little bit. It's an acronym for the phrase autosuficiencia juntando con apoyo, which means supporting self-sufficiency. And at the Aja Project, our mission is to cultivate a compassionate space for young people, activists, visual artists, and educators to engage critically in the issues that affect our community and to realize our collective liberation through participatory storytelling and the documentary arts. And so one of the really important pivots that we're making at Aja is the development of our fellowship program. So Kristi was a delight, right, to prototype this with us. Really, it's an opportunity for us to invest directly into the future leaders of our community. And I feel like the first time I met Kristi, I knew that I really wanted to work with her. I wanted her to be with us on the Aja team. I would really like to also take a moment to acknowledge all the hardworking folks dedicated to the transformation of the education system. I believe it's one of the structures that continue to oppress and divide us, and we at Aja work together to bridge that gap. And so my hope is that our fellowship programs help to level the playing field, and by providing access to programs to those who have been historically overlooked, that we create a new educational landscape and to create a new or to have programs that are led by our community and for our community to help bridge the gaps between teacher and student, artist and non-artist, and also the served and underserved. So the Civil Liberties Fellowship is rooted in the study of the World War II internment of Japanese Americans and its connection to current issues of politics, culture, and identity. And it required our participants to explore the broader scope of civil history and the current executive orders that impact us today and kind of perpetually divide and create the, the perpetual divide created by power and privilege, excuse me. I experienced firsthand that the Civil Liberties Fellowship was about creating a safe space to ask hard questions and to slow down and reflect on the injustices that we see in the world. Watching the program unfold was truly an amazing experience to witness these fellows tie their new knowledge to a personal experience, which is so clearly evident in the work that you'll see by Kristi today. And I just also want to make sure that we say thank you to Mary Beth Barber and the team at California State Library who actually awarded us the Civil Liberties Project grant, and just recognize them for their support and patience while we complete this project throughout 2020 till now. And yes, on behalf of the Aja Project team, I just want to say how fortunate we are to be here and to just make a new mark in history. So yes, thank you, everybody.
So now we're going to watch a short video that I created about the piece. So it'll give you a sense of being there. In garden design in ancient Japan and China, there's a technique called shakkei in Japanese and jièjǐng in Chinese. These both translate in English to borrowed scenery. In this technique, a designer takes a distant view, such as a faraway mountain, and incorporates or borrows it into the garden composition. Even though the distant mountain is outside of the garden and far in the background, the designer features it as a continuous part of the garden itself. My name is Kristi Lin, and I'm a 4th generation Japanese American and 3rd generation Chinese American artist and landscape designer. I got my degree in landscape architecture, and I design landscapes throughout San Diego. So for me, it was fascinating to find that both Chinese and Japanese garden designers used the same borrowed scenery technique in their designs. So in this piece, I decided to use the borrowed scenery technique to explore how to incorporate or borrow my heritage into my life. As I started to do research on my heritage, I looked at old photographs of the Japanese American community in San Diego. I grew up in a church that traces one part of its lineage to the first Japanese Congregational Church in San Diego, founded in 1907. In my research, I found photos of now elderly church members as young kids growing up in a community of Japanese Americans with a Japanese enclave that used to exist in downtown San Diego, and tons of Japanese festivals and cultural events. Over the last 100 years, so much has changed. Their connection to being Japanese has really been impacted by being sent to prison camps for Japanese Americans during World War II, experiencing the pressure to assimilate and become all-American. And now, the rising number of us, like myself, identifying as more than one ethnicity. So much has changed, and we're left with both a sense of nostalgia as well as a sense of wonder. What will happen next? My installation, Borrowed Scenery, is an exploration into how I can borrow the past and at the same time make it my own. Set in the Japanese Friendship Garden, views of the historic garden are borrowed or featured through woven screens created from my clothes that I soaked in dye baths of onion skins, turmeric, avocado peels, purple cabbage, pomegranate, black beans, and kuromame beans. With the food that I ate and the clothes that I wore, the screens represent the world that I inhabit, a world that is different from the generations that came before me, yet similar in many ways as well. The screens are woven with traditional Asian patterns as we think about the patterns and repetition in celebrating cultural holidays or cooking the same recipes over and over again. On my screens, however, the patterns are not exact replicas of the traditional patterns, and in this way they reflect how each generation naturally adds and changes these patterns in their own way. I'm really interested in how our cultures will change naturally, sort of like natural phenomena. Like this piece changing with the sunlight, blowing in the wind, fading, casting shadows, and withstanding the rain, how too will our cultures change naturally? How will they frame the ever-changing views of the world around them? And how will they continue to borrow from the past and at the same time transform beyond our imaginations?
Great. I hope you enjoyed that video. And yes, thank you again for everyone joining us. I'd like to help moderate a conversation about Kristi's work. And so if you haven't been in a conversation with me before, I love when we have audience participation. So please feel free. I have some questions prepared, but I'm happy to announce any questions that happen to pop up in the chat. Or if you want to just go ahead and ask a question, please do not hesitate. All right, so I'll just start the conversation though. And Kristi, so I'll direct this one to you. And I'm just curious, I know that you've done a lot of work in the community, especially about your cultural heritage. And I'm just curious, how has this experience with the Civil Liberties Project been similar or different for you? And I know a lot of you have maybe seen some of the work that she's done before. So I'm excited to hear about this.
Yeah, well, yeah, like again, just thanks for coming. I think in the beginning I was just like kind of shocked at how many people came. So just again, I'm just very happy to see you all. And okay, so to that question, yeah, so I the Civil Liberties Fellowship with the Aja Project was really different. Like Riz said, in the past, like in college, I was interning with the Japanese American Citizens League up in Florin and by Sacramento, and I was helping to lead pilgrimages to Manzanar, which is one of the World War II incarceration sites. And we did a lot of talks, a lot of like outreach, and then it all culminated in this like big 3-day pilgrimage. And then I also was volunteering with the Japanese American Historical Society down here, and just really involved in like my church and like the archiving work of telling the story of both the Japanese church and the Caucasian church that merged and became our church today. So just really deep in this archiving and history. But what I got new was just a real sense of creativity in history. What I realized is like to put ourselves in like a historical time period and try to understand what it was like to be in those camps and things like that, it really takes a lot of imagination. And I feel like when I was doing this other work, it was very about preservation and trying to hold on and remember and never forget, like Day of Remembrance, all of these things. And I think when we are always trying to remember something, we kind of forget about putting our own imagination to it. And that's really with the Aja Project. We started to look at the work of other artists who had reinterpreted history or looked at really historic traditions. And it really gave me kind of a new perspective on that. To help people understand history, we also have to help people use their imagination.
I love that, Kristi. Thank you so much. I feel like there was a lot of transformation. Like what I'm hearing from you is that it was this transformative process. And for me, I think that's so interesting, especially to watch it unfold. Like I got to meet you at the beginning of the program, or even before that you started the program, right? And I got to know you all the way through. And what I've noticed is all of the changes in the Inquisition, the questions that came to mind from you and all of the fellows. And something that I really love is the shift in learning that I saw. And so as I'm in gallery mode right now, so I'm looking at everybody here. And what's really beautiful is that we have an intergenerational space happening right now. I see some tinies here. I see like your community, your whole community has showed up, right? And so I'm curious, this wasn't a question that we planned, but like the work that you made, how do you hope that it reaches all ages, or your whole, all generations of your community?
Yeah, that's really what I wished for, that it would like reach the old people and the young people. I think to I think in that I really wanted to create a landscape, because so I got my degree in landscape architecture from UC Davis, and I really believed in like bringing people together in like a place that's like designed for like gathering or designed for conversation. So the piece, as you saw, is this like all these screens are hanging from this trellis, and so you kind of find your own way. And it's I've seen just from being there, it's like kind of kids interact with it differently, and then adults could like take a seat there. And I really think there's opportunity in landscape design to bring people of different generations together. So this is an experiment in that. Also, I wanted to share a few more photos. So I'm going to share my screen again.
Great. Yeah, the photos are really beautiful. If you haven't got the chance to go to the Japanese Friendship Garden, it's no substitute, but it definitely helps you feel the beauty of the space. So thanks for sharing those, Kristi. As you pull them up, can you, let me see. I guess if you don't mind, I'm going to get a little bit more personal. And so I'm just curious, within the context of history and archiving. So I know in the actual program, you looked at a lot of images from archives, you read Susan Hazukawa's book. And so, yeah, like, why do you think it's important for people to share their personal stories? And now that you see your work, can you just share the value that you see in sharing your story?
Yeah, I think what I really realized this time is that my story is different. I I I thought that I had pretty similar story from like say my parents or just other people who have, like grown up in the US. Like whereas I feel like we think of like the people who immigrated as having a much different story. But I realized actually that my the factors of like me growing up here in San Diego, being like half Japanese, half Chinese, fourth generation, third generation, all these different things actually makes for a quite different perspective. So instead of trying to like hold on to traditions or like replicate what's already been done, I started more to think it would be more interesting to think, okay, like since I have all these different backgrounds, what then can I create that's different? And how might that be able to help my community see their heritage in a different way?
Great. Yeah, if you want to pull up those photos, Kristi.
Oh, are they playing or no?
It's like your window. It's like a
Oh,
window
really?
with all.
I see it. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew. I'm gonna look over to the chat and let me make sure that I'm addressing the first one here. Kristi, we have a question from Helene, and she's asking, how long does it take to create one of these pieces?
You see it now? Oh,
Yes, we
great.
can see it.
Because we're all looking at the other thing. Okay. I completely lose track of time. That's the answer. Because I think if you know me, you know I just love making art. I think it's just my biggest passion, and I don't know how long it took. I just get lost.
Yeah, I love how that description. So how would you describe the role of kind of meditation or just thinking in the process of your art making? Because I feel that in it, if that makes sense.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I spent about every weekend going to the Japanese Friendship Garden to just walk around, and um, I really think I get the best ideas when I'm not really thinking about it. So yeah, trying to just look at I really draw a lot from nature, I think, and what this piece is about changing over time. So as you can see, like the sun casts different shadows on it. It moves in the wind. Um, it's designed to fade. So these colors are from food scraps, and you'll see in the slideshow, as this was taken like the day it was installed, but after a while, I took some pictures from yesterday. It looks so different. And I like that because just similarly, like our culture can't stay the same. And like, and so it's really more about like what will happen next. And if we look at it more of like a question of, ooh, like what's happening next, rather than, oh, like it's fading, like then what other possibilities could we see?
Yeah, that's a really important question. I like how you said, what happens next? And so I feel as though there may be people in this crowd that are interested in asking that question themselves. And so here in Leslie Du's comment, she's saying, I love your artwork, shows how geography and where one grows up plays a huge role in the progression of cultural heritage. Your pieces show how art plays an integral role in our community or in our cultural imagination, excuse me, an imagination where art serves as liberation of the self to be oneself, while also showing a connection to communities. And the question is, do you have any plans of teaching community members how to make their own borrowed scenery art pieces?
Oh, it's an interesting question. um I I think if I think what I took away from all this is it's about making history your own. So whether it's making a screen or something like that, it it doesn't matter. It's about you taking your heritage and making it making it your own in whatever way you want, and being creative with it. I think I drew from landscape design to find that borrowed scenery concept, but if somebody's into music or something, I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, what I hear what you're talking about is process. And I know that Andrea Chung was your mentor. So I'm just curious how working with your mentor and then also maybe some of the artists that were introduced to you in the class by Louisa and Dana. Yeah, did any of did their process impact your process, I guess?
Yeah, just a little bit more background on like the Civil Liberties Fellowship. We met every week, twice a week in the evenings, and there were three of us and two teaching artists. And then I had a mentor, Andrea Chung, who is also a professional artist. And one of our guest speakers was Wendy Maruyama, who is here in the room. And what I was really inspired by is everybody, I guess not to say it sound repetitive, but just finding in the Japanese American story something that they could really connect with. And for my two other fellows, one is from Somalia and one is Latina. And so they were really drawn to pictures of women sewing and weaving. They're sewing mostly inside of the camps. And so one of them created these dresses. This is Natalia. She created these dresses that that like wove together the Mexican dresses and the Japanese type of dresses. And then the other one was thinking about home and being in this refugee camp in Somalia. And she really connected that through the fabric also. So all that's to say, I guess, is really just, I got to see the Japanese American story just interpreted and connected in ways that I didn't ever consider.
I see. I definitely saw a lot of thinking outside of the box. And so I think I'm seeing from questions here, a lot of people are wondering, how did you arrive to the decision to use food in your project? So here we have, what made you decide to dye your own fabric from natural foods? And then Wendy, I saw your question too, which was, what was the intent when you used your own clothing? And I think we're also concerned, do you have, like, where did all the, like, do you have all your, like, do you have clothes? So did you rip up your wardrobe, basically?
I do. I also enlisted my family in collecting all the foods and the clothes. But basically what I also see is just like, you know, I wanted to use what I already had. And like, I'm always very inspired by like the Japanese Americans in the camps who made all kinds of arts and crafts out of just like sticks and like what they had when they were in the prison. And so this, I wanted to use a similar idea of my own clothes and the food and not wasting anything. And I also wanted to explore like these are dyed with like avocados and turmeric and just all kinds of foods that aren't really necessarily like Japanese or Chinese, but it's what I eat. And so it more represents like this blending of cultures that I inhabit.
You had mentioned, I think you might be ready for it. I think
Kaya wanted to say she thinks your art is very beautiful.
Oh, thanks, Kaya.
And they both said they want to be artists now.
Yay.
I can make a backpack.
Okay, we're gonna put ourselves on mute now.
I think that's a great segue into us making sure that the whole all the guests have an opportunity to ask. So I still have more questions, but Kristi, would it be okay to go back to gallery view so that we could see the team and see if there's anybody that wants to ask some questions out loud? So we have just a little over 20 minutes. So if there's anybody that wants to ask the question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. And then I could also keep an eye on the chat and make sure that we get all of those questions answered as well. So
actually, Riz, there was one question by Janya, I believe. What was the first creation you made that you culturally connected with?
Oh, um, hmm. Let's see, uh, probably this piece actually. Like, I think, I think, I think I've done a lot of work that's cultural, like origami or taiko drumming or all these cultural things, but connected with, I think would be this one because it for the first time I feel like tells my story. And I've never really made anything that's autobiographical or like not trying to make it like a perfect piece of origami.
Kristi, how did your sister and your parents influence this project, and are you also selling any of your artwork in the future?
Well, I mean, my parents, they just went off mute. You know, I think, you know, my parents are very like Asian American, like they always were bringing me to like see Asian American exhibits, movies. Like they you know both grew up in the U.S. and always questioning kind of like what is what is what is being Asian American. And so I think for for me, I think they I don't- they it was never like it's like a literally like a constant topic of discussion. It's like Asian American studies. So I don't know what how how exactly though they they shaped it other than that we always talk about Asian American life.
Perhaps, Kristi, it's a good way to segue to the audience as well. And so I see a lot of smiles across the screen. I have a feeling that those smiles are a lot of people that known you for a while, seen the work that you've done. And so I'm curious, if it's okay, I could ask the audience, what is it like to see Kristi's vision in a shape and in an object after knowing her for however many years you've known her, or through the projects and the work that you've seen her do? What is it like to see it out of her brain and in the garden now?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, we're the parents and it's amazing to us. But one thing I just kind of had this epiphany today. I'm Kristi's mom, this is her dad. Anyway, I was looking at the screens, thinking about the internment, and I was thinking like, okay, what did they have at in the internment? They had a lot of barbed wire and people were always looking out through fences. And so what they saw was very much like the screens. They saw in a distance, they saw mountains, they saw different, like my dad was at Topaz, my mom was at Heart Mountain, Wyoming. And so that's what they saw. And I was thinking about their culture being like the pieces of fabric, and the culture was fading in the 4 years and from then on, you know, their culture kind of faded and changed as a result of being in the internment. So anyway, it was just like a whole different way to think about it. We have watched Kristi making these screens and all kinds of her creations. Her room is just like a museum, and it's overflowing into the hallways, and she has stuff hanging on the wall, and even to the point where I scraped my face at the very beginning walking by one of her pieces because I wasn't used to all this stuff hanging on the walls. But anyway, it's fun to see it in the garden. It's been fun.
Yeah, we consciously took our two daughters to China and Japan, when they were younger. We wanted them to see the cultures over there. We actually lived in Japan for 2-3 month periods. And so she saw all that and kind of, I don't know, it's somewhere, it's in her brain. I know that, and we talk about it. And so her whole value system is formed by sort of synthesizing Chinese and Japanese culture. She's very aware. My father built the first modern airplane in China. And so she read my father's biography, and then she made a quilt that hangs in our living room of the airplane that my father made. So it's, we're just thrilled that she just, of her own doing. We don't tell her to do anything. It's just like, holy cow, what has she thought of now? And so it's really a delight. So.
It's thrilling for me to see Kristi. I had the privilege because of knowing her parents, of playing with her and eating with her when she was like a toddler. And now it's just awesome to see her as this fabulous young woman combining history and culture and art and garden design and 2 major ethnicities. And I just thank you all. I thank the Japanese Friendship Garden and the California Library System and everyone for bringing this. And I've also been sharing the 5-minute clip with friends. Well, one friend went walking with and go walking with every Thursday, who's Latina, and she's going to be curating a show up in, I believe it's Salinas, in October for Latina, Mexicana, Chicana art. And I thought that maybe this might give some ideas for that show. And so this brings in weaving as well as history and the 2 cultures, and it's multicultural in a way. Thank you so much, Kristi and Jim and Julie and everyone.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you, parents.
We have another question in the chat, Kristi, I think is important, is where will you go next? What will you do? Will you go back to landscape design, or are there more plans to create more sculptures?
I want to do both. I think what I'm really interested in is kind of rethinking how we design memorials. I think memorial design, usually is like this big monolithic plaque or like a statue. But really, what I got out of this program is like, how do we actually remember? And like, I think we remember through like, reminders and like repetition, but also like multi-sensory experiences where you get to see and hear and like walk through something. So I think I look at like the world has so many issues of civil liberties or climate, and I really want to use this different idea of memorial design to make us like stop and think about these other issues in the world.
We're really lucky to have you around to help us process and then synthesize a lot of this information through your vision, Kristi. Jim, I see you have a hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, congratulations, Kristi. We're very proud of you. And I actually had a question. Were there any musical pieces that inspired you for some of your art?
Oh, thanks. That's my uncle, and he knows that I play a lot of piano. So I think this particular piece, what I love most about it is you can watch it like kind of sway in the wind, and it's very like, it's very I think musical in that way. I think just all throughout just like landscape design there, it's very musical. I think as I was putting up the pieces, there was it's you I don't know, I don't know like how to describe it, but there's like a way that I really wanted each one like to be angled or like higher or lower, and I think I kind of draw a lot on when I when I when I play piano, it's just like this whole like world of like swirling music. So I I think that definitely was carried in.
We have about 10 minutes left, so I just want to make sure if anybody wants to ask a question that we squeeze it in. Let's see. I hope it's okay to ask. I think I see Kelly. Are you Kristi's sister?
That is correct.
Because I know that your mom and dad had mentioned, oh, she has a sister. And so I'm just curious. I know that we see a lot of people here from probably projects that Kristi has been involved in through like the Japanese Historical Society and through the church. And I'm just curious, as someone that comes from the same generation as Kristi, what is it like to see what is it like to see her work up and about and in this context, I guess? Because I know you've probably seen it in her room, but now it's like in a different place.
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. I feel like something that's been really cool too is before, I feel like she would kind of make works that were a little bit like small in size. And like with this, she really wanted to make it feel big and expansive. And I think that's so awesome. Just like not wanting to like really wanting it to be shown and seen, and like for us as a generation even to be seen. And so I love that aspect of it for sure. And then I think also it's just been fun like just talking with her about it, and I feel like we like to just like bounce ideas off each other and stuff. And when you're talking to her, at least from my perspective being her sister, who knows what other people, but I feel like for me, it's just fun because she always comes at everything with such an open-minded attitude. And so like, I'll be like, oh, like, does this kind of like stand for this? And then she's like, oh, maybe it could stand for this and stuff. And so I think that's something that's really nice to see as well.
Yeah, excellent brainstormer problem solving skills Kristi has. So if you ever have a challenge, you always call up. Susan Midori Jones, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, love your work, Kristi. It looks that I like the concept a lot. I was wondering, have you had a chance to visit any of the internment camps, you know, like Heart Mountain or Topaz?
Yeah, I've been to Manzanar and Poston. I would say going to Manzanar actually was one of the most influential things in making me wanting to go into landscape architecture. because I had seen all these photos. Like I said, like my parents took me to like all these exhibits. So you're looking at all these photos, black and white photos all the time of these camps. And it really kind of became like just not so interesting. But then when I went to Manzanar and I like literally was there and like saw the fence and like saw like the landscape there, it really came to life. And so from that, I got really inspired to go into landscape architecture because I saw that landscape architects had created this place that I got that just like gave me a whole different view of my culture and community. So I highly recommend people to go. It's just really unmatched.
Well, you're great.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that your pieces are beautiful, and it just struck me how you took chicken wire that was certainly not a thing of beauty and turned it into this object that is really beautiful, you know. So the prison camp or the internment camp issue with making something that was really horrible, adding your personal touch and making it an object of beauty, I think is a wonderful juxtaposition. And what's going to happen to your pieces after the exhibit is over?
Well, I'm not sure yet, but I really hope to exhibit them somewhere else. I hope they can continue their lives and also frame different scenery, frame other historic sites, and look at other histories that aren't told.
So your mom's not going to scratch your face on your pieces at home anymore then?
No, they'll all see in my room.
Unless she wants to, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You know what? I still see some questions. I know there's probably lots of inquiries about the work. So I was going to say, Kristi, if you want to leave maybe your email in the chat, because I know that we're starting to wrap up. I know that there are a couple of like events and things like that we want to make sure people know about before they leave the room. And I just thought I would be remiss if I missed Natalia and Luisa. I see you here in the room, and I was just curious, or every time we had a class at Civil Liberties, they always did a breathing exercise. I love the idea that everybody wanted to slow down. I learned a lot from the class, and I just thought, Natalia and Luisa, is there anything that you could share that you learned from Kristi from this project?
Hi, I guess I'll go first. I don't see Natalia. Yeah, I guess just like being open-minded and being inviting of everyone's opinion. Like honestly, Kristi's is of the five, the one that had the most experience with the historical context. But the attitude was always open from, you know, learning about art through Dana Rai and learning about how her colleagues interpreted the material themselves. So yeah, I think just like that openness and like humbleness when addressing the topic, even if she had experience with it. Congrats.
Thank you, Lisa. And Lisa was a great teacher.
Great. Yeah, I caught them off guard. I didn't ask ahead of time, so I'm not sure if Natalia is available. So that's so sorry about that, Natalia, if you're unavailable.
It's okay. I'm
Okay.
available. I would agree with what Luisa said, but I think more importantly, Kristi, I just want to tell you that it's so lovely to see the community that's supporting you tonight. That is what you shared with us the most, how you have worked at the Tea Garden before, and you've been a part of archiving your Japanese and Chinese heritage in San Diego prior to the Aja project. You've worked on it for so many years. And so to be a part of this tonight and see all these lovely people from your past adventures supporting you is just beautiful. And I'm so happy for you and happy I could be a part of it tonight as well.
Yeah, I'm still kind of like shocked at like all the people who came and just all these people from Davis or from like everywhere that I've been. And I just am this is really like the first time that I ever made anything that's so personal, and it just means so much to me to be able to share it with everybody who really actually helped make the piece, because the piece is about everything that I've like absorbed from all of you. And so I really want to say some specific thank yous to the California State Library who funded the project, the Aja Project, and in particular, the teaching artist Louisa, who you just heard from, as well as Dana Washington Queen, and my fellows, Famo Musa and Natalia Quintero, who you just met, my mentor, Andrea Chung, Beto Soto, who took the beautiful photographs. You know which ones those were. They're just gorgeous. And the guest speakers of our class, who are Wendy Maruyama, Susan Hasakawa, Rebecca Goldschmidt, Alana Aritum, and the Interference Archive. And of course, Riz. I just am so appreciative that you facilitated this and just really brought everybody together. And of course, the Japanese Friendship Garden, especially Emiko Scooter and John Osio, who facilitated in the beginning. Thank you so much. And especially to everybody who came. And really, you've just all supported me so much. And I just am really excited that I was able to share this with them. So the exhibit Borrowed Scenery is, you can visit it in person until February 28th. And also we created a catalog, so a little book about the process and the pieces of all the other fellows as well. And you can read that on the Aja Project website. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's kristimlin.art. And yeah, we're going to talk about a little upcoming events with Aja. Oh, Riz, do you want to
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. We are having a virtual walkthrough on Tuesday, March 16, and it's a project called Courageous Voices. Some of you may have seen the Little Saigon Stories project that happened in City Heights, and so that will be 1/3 of this exhibition. It will also include projects from our program called Journey, which is a 20-year-long project. It's our longest standing program. And then we'll also be introducing a book called Cameras for Peace, which was created by one of our board members, a photography book based on youth photography in Colombia.
And John, are there any upcoming programs at the Friendship Garden?
Quite a few. I'll just leave the link for our general programs in the chat room. The only thing I would like to kind of highlight, though, is that the Cherry Blossom Festival is returning to the Japanese Friendship Garden in some capacity. So throughout the month of March, we'll be having kind of a hybrid setup with on-site programming and vendors during the first 2 weekends. And then throughout all of March, there's going to be a similar format to this with performers and demonstrators. We could kind of like meet and greet and discuss everything instead of just, just watching them with their 5-minute performance or whatever it might be. So a lot more interaction virtually this time around for Cherry Blossom season. So we hope to see you all there, whether it be in person or through Zoom. And also, if you wanted more information on, or I guess more details on that program or anything else, or maybe some behind the scenes tidbits, my email's in the chat room as well. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for coming. And
Bye.
Bye, Kristi.
Bye, Tim.
Brian?
You're unmuted.
Thanks, Kristi. Jim,
Yeah.
bye.
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 Bye. Thank you. Beautiful
Bye,
work.
Kristi.
Bye, Susan.
That was nice. Wow. That was the biggest